Well, this is a phrase that has taken on more significance and more prominence, particularly in the last year, which is really a phrase that tries to encapsulate the fact that safety risks, particularly when we're talking about it in a workplace context, are not just about physical safety. It extends to the psychological, intellectual, emotional safety of people at work. And what we are seeing and hearing is that this phrase and the concept sort of encapsulated by the phrase are being thrown around a lot more, and with almost an alarming level of regularity and frequency for some employers and in some industries by employees.
So, what does it amount to? What are examples of
Yeah,
psychosocial risk? I should say.
So some of the context is that an employee who might feel that they are being performance managed unfairly. They might be feeling that amounts to, or they feel that they are being harassed or bullied. They can't point to any necessarily physical risks to their safety, but they say that the conduct that is being engaged in, at least according to them, is causing them stress, causing them anxiety. It might cause an exacerbation in a pre-existing mental health condition, all of those kinds of things. So really, it's the fact that I, as an employee, say that my psychosocial safety at work is being compromised as a result of the conduct that has been engaged in by another individual, group of individuals, or my employer generally, because it is causing me to feel stressed, causing me to feel anxious, etc.
So, is this happening more frequently now, or if so, why?
Well, I actually think that the answer to that question is very similar to the question around, are we seeing more sexual harassment happen in workplaces these days? And I think the answer to both of those questions is no. But what we are seeing is that the escalation and the perception, rightly or wrongly, that behaviours are happening that do fall into this particular category is escalating rapidly and exponentially. So I don't actually think that there's more conduct that represents these risks. If anything, as a result of heightened education and employers taking their responsibilities to train and educate and have the right kind of policies in place, we're probably seeing less of the conduct, but we are seeing far more escalation of the conduct, and we're seeing far more escalation at lower touch points. So what might have been a trigger for someone to complain about bullying or about harassment 5-10 years ago has lowered considerably now, and so that's going to be escalated, be that internally or externally, at a far earlier stage.
How are these complaints manifesting at the moment, just in terms of how employees may be reporting this to their managers? Is it a matter of perhaps making them aware of the issues, or actually making an official complaint, if you like?
Yeah, so what we are seeing and hearing amongst our clients is that this is operating at two levels. At one level, you've got your formal complaints, and that might be a complaint to one's manager, or it might be a complaint to an organisation's human resources department or someone in senior management. Alternatively, it might take the form of some kind of whistleblowing complaint. But the other level at which it's playing out, and this is the one where I think employers are really struggling, is they are just getting references to these matters almost being dropped into conversation. For example, only yesterday, I had a client who rang us in a little bit of a panicked state saying, we're working through a redundancy process with a particular employee, and that employee has said that you can't do this because you are endangering my psychosocial safety as a result of talking to me about structural changes. And the client naturally doesn't know whether that's something that they should be very concerned about. Is there a process that they need to follow? Does that mean that what they would ordinarily do as part of their restructuring process has to be put on hold? So it's really playing out at those two levels. The formal complaint level is much easier for an organisation to deal with because they can go through their processes. I'm not necessarily making a complaint, but I'm making a reference to this as being an issue, is where employers struggle because they don't know how far they can push it. Can they actually say to the employee, well, you can't just put that out there. You either do have to make a complaint to allow us to deal with it, or you have to sort of withdraw it because we can't be in this no person's land.
It almost sounds open-ended, particularly. I mean, you give the example perhaps of someone being made redundant or being alerted to the fact that they're likely to be made redundant, and of course that's upsetting. Therefore, do they have a right to make a complaint about how they feel?
Well, this is really the core of what is taking up a lot of time of organisations in the context of people management. Most organisations understand that if someone goes down the path of formalising a complaint, particularly where it deals with a matter, particularly in this day and age, of sexual harassment or bullying, or something that would be quite serious on any understanding of those concepts. But when someone just makes a reference to how they are feeling, does that fall within the employer's purview or obligation to do something about it? And I think this is really a matter where it's not going to be a one size fits all. Different organisations will have different approaches. We've got some clients and some employers are very open about saying they care for everyone in all respects and all facets, and whether it falls within a legal prism or not doesn't matter. They'll respond. They'll take action. Others are like, well, no, that's just too open-ended for us. And if we were doing that, we'd really be getting no work done in this organisation. So organisations have to grapple with this as a reality. And be clear on where they stand and what they're going to do when this comes up. And it is coming up, and it will continue to come up.
Yeah, so Joydeep, how are these how companies and businesses handling this? The employer, what strategies do they or should they have in place?
Yeah, so a lot of employers will have an employee assistance program or something akin to that. And that's a helpful piece of infrastructure for an organisation to have, because what it does allow a manager or representative of the organisation to do, where someone makes that kind of a reference or talks about some adverse feelings that they are having, is that they can encourage that person to utilise the services of the employee assistance program. Now, often those facilities are not going to report back the detail of what transpires, and indeed whether that particular employee has made contact, but it's something that at least the employer can say, we did something. The bigger concern, though, for employers is how do you know whether there is any validity to what is being said or not? And I do think that there's a bigger picture concern for employers around this, which has to go above the needs and wants of the individual employee. That's part of it, absolutely. But they also need to start asking themselves, well, look, if we've got one person who's made a noise about it, how do we know that there aren't other people who may be dealing with these kinds of matters in their team or department or wherever else, and they're just not saying anything because they're afraid of the repercussions of doing so, or they're concerned about their job security? So this is where employers, I think, need to be more acutely aware of what's actually transpiring within their organisations. They need to be looking at annual reviews and the notes taken in exit interviews and engagement surveys and all of the things that they may have in place and should have in place to try to get a sense of what's the pulse of the organisation.